Hi, this is Roger Moore, and you're listening to James Bond Radio.
Hello, and welcome to James Bond Radio. Today, we are talking to an absolute legend, the star of License to Kill, Die Hard, The Goonies, and many, many more. And I'm joined by my man in LA, our man in LA, I should say, JW. How you doing, John?
I'm doing great. Just thrilled to be here. This is so exciting. I cannot wait to make this phone call.
Yeah, dude.
Sanchez.
Yeah, man. Sanchez on the show. He's been high on the bucket list for a long time. And he's somebody that we've tried to make happen in the past, and we've got close, and then it hasn't happened for whatever reason. But yeah, it's finally happening. We're going to get on the phone with Robert, and we're going to talk License to Kill. I'm super excited, man.
Yeah. This is it's a dream come true, really.
Isn't it just?
I mean, if you could pick any baddie to talk to, I mean, he's the top, right? I mean, he's the guy.
I remember when I was a kid, man, I was too young to see License to Kill in the cinema. So I couldn't, it was the forbidden adult Bond film, because I couldn't go and see it in the cinema. I had to wait until it came out on VHS years later, or however long it was. And it was that thing of when you're a kid and you watch like a Schwarzenegger movie that's an 18 certificate and you're like, whoa, and you feel like, you're going behind some hidden door. That's what Sanchez was like for me when that film came about. So this is a moment. And what a terrifying character Sanchez is. And also what a terrifying man Robert Davi is, because he's got that passion in him, and it's kind of he's like an intimidating dude, isn't he? Like, especially if
very intimidating.
If you follow his social medias and stuff, he likes a rant about politics and various things that are happening in the world. So yeah, I hope this goes well, man.
I think it's going to go great. Yeah. I'm going to let you do all the talking in the beginning. I'm nervous.
All right, man. Should we get cracking? Should we do it?
Let's do it.
Let's talk to Robert Davi.
My name's Bond. James Bond.
Bond. James.
Bond, what do you think you're doing?
Keeping the British end up, sir.
Welcome to James Bond Radio. News, reviews, and discussion of all things 007.
Lucy, as you can see, I have no problem with female authority.
Oh, pipe down, 007.
Do you expect me to talk?
No, Mr. Bond, I expect you to lie.
So, Robert Davi, it's an honor to have you on the show. Welcome.
Well, it's great to be here. I'm very pleased to be here and talking to you and your listeners.
Absolutely. I know our listeners are going to be super thrilled to hear from you today. As Frank Sanchez, obviously, you terrified me as a small child because I was too young to go and watch License to Kill in the cinema at the time because it was a 15 certificate in the UK. And you were always the kind of the villain that was the grown-up villain that, was extra naughty being a young kid. So it really is an honor to have you on the show.
Well, thank you. And I'm sorry that I terrified you. Actually, Sanchez was very good to children. It was just, people that betrayed him. But to kids, if they ever had the scene that I had with the children in the film, you would have felt very protected by Sanchez.
Absolutely. So how did that come up? How did Bond enter your life? Like, when did you first learn about Sanchez? How did it all go down?
Well, first off, Bond entered my life like everyone else when the first Bond film came along. Dr. No, right? And at least the first Connery Bond film, and it was always very interesting because I always saw this name, Albert R. Broccoli. When you would have, for some reason, that name stuck out because I'm Italian American, and that was an Italian name doing this film, right? Mm-hmm. And Tubby was born in Astoria, Queens, where I was born, and then grew up on Long Island, where I grew up. And there was this always, not having met him, but having mythologized him because of the Bond films, and his career as a producer in movies. So subsequently in the 80s, I was in Beverly Hills. Do you know Cafe Roma? You say you're in Los Angeles. You know
Yes,
Cafe Roma?
I sure do.
All right. Cafe Roma, I was one of the first people to go there. And then afterwards, Schwarzenegger and Mickey Rourke and I brought a lot of guys there. Stallone, everybody started hanging there.
Oh, wow.
This was in the 80s. Yeah. It was one of the first.
It's legendary.
Yeah. And I met, there used to be a hair salon, as you know, Giuseppe Franco. And Giuseppe was there, and people would go get their hair done, but they'd pass by. So there was this one girl who would get her hair done with Giuseppe, and it was this Tina Broccoli, Cubby's daughter. And she was a huge fan of Goonies and was very, enamored with me from Goonies. And you got to meet my dad. My dad would love you. And she had read about me being from Astoria and all of this. So she set up a dinner with Cubby and Dana, her stepmom. And we had dinner. Cubby invited me to dinner at the bistro at the time. That was there in Beverly Hills, which was a great restaurant.
Yeah.
And I got along famously with Cubby there. And a year later, I was doing a picture with Sam Waterston and an actor called Ron Liebman, who recently died a few weeks ago, called Terrorist on Trial, the United States of America versus Salim Majami, which was really ahead of its time. I mean, one of the first pieces done on what we've now seen happen since 9/11 and the whole, terrorist cells and different things. I played a Palestinian kidnapped by the United States government to stand trial for acts of terrorism. It was about due process. Alan Dershowitz, the great Alan Dershowitz, was the technical advisor of the film.
Oh, wow.
And it was played on a 3-hour CBS special. I had gotten tremendous reviews, the cover of like the New York Times, the LA Times, the Herald Examiner, all these papers, and a lot of great response to the interpretation of the character, Salim Ajami, that I played. And as it goes, Davi Broccoli got a phone call from Richard Maibaum. Now, if you're a Bond fan, you know Richard Maibaum had written all the Bond films.
Yeah,
Cubby produced them all up until then. And Richard called up Cubby and said, "Cubby, put on Channel 2 right away." Cubby says, "I've got it on." And he said, "That's the next Bond villain." Cubby said, "I agree." So they called me into the office the next day. This was a Sunday night this thing aired. And they called me into the office. I sat with Cubby and Michael Wilson, and they told me they want me to be the next Bond villain. Wow. And there was no, "We want you to read for it." They were writing it, actually. But they knew that they wanted me for the next Bond villain. They said, "You're going to hear a lot of nonsense around," and they wanted me to, of course, meet Timothy, and I guess to see how we got along. And so they set up a lunch a couple of weeks later with Timothy and myself. And if you see the film, the first meeting that Timothy and I met with in Cubby's office in John Glenn, that kind of was the same feeling that we portrayed in the film when Bond first meets Sanchez.
Right.
And you have that laughter that they both do. They bond both in a laughter kind of thing.
Uh-huh.
And then it was the shaping of the script and the character. And both Timothy and I were on the same page in terms of that. We went back to Casino Royale and discussed with Cubby and Michael Wilson and Richard how in those films, Bond or at least in the book, Bond and the villain are mirror images of each other.
Mm.
And Timothy and I being, I was probably the youngest Bond villain at the time. The decision and the interpretive aspect of it was made to have us have the same side of two sides of the same coin.
Yeah,
that's super interesting.
And that's how that came along. So I played Sanchez as if he was Bond in my head. That was my, of course, with the Colombian accent and with the actions that I had to do, and also, different cultural thing with Sanchez, and put in the line, "Loyalty is more important to me than money." And if you look at the film, if you analyze the film, there is no act of violence that Sanchez commits that isn't first committed against him.
Huh.
Wow.
Or act of betrayal. Even the opening with Lupe, promise you his heart, give him his heart. Sanchez didn't commit the act. He was in love with Lupe. And so why would somebody betray Sanchez's affection for Lupe? Also, it was a game like between Sanchez and Lupe. I wanted it to be a game, a sexual game. This is before 50 Shades of Grey. Don't forget. Yeah. And they couldn't. They didn't want to. They didn't want to connect violence and sexuality. So they had to put fake tears in her eyes because I said at the thing. I said that Lupe should enjoy Sanchez whipping her. Yeah. She should have a certain pleasure. It should be pleasurable. And, not that it is pleasurable, but it was a game that the two of them were playing. I thought that would be a very interesting thing because the dark sexuality that Ian Fleming portrays in the Bond films are there.
Yeah,
for Bond. Hence the mirror images, even in terms of the treatment of women. And the only act of violence that Sanchez commits that is, you could say, unjustified, is when he has to start cutting overhead. And he got rid of that pain in the ass accountant. Where he had time to start cutting overhead. And that's really the only thing. Otherwise, Bond sets up this idea of the Achilles heel of Sanchez, him being suspicious. Bond feeding off of Sanchez's loyalty is more important to me than money. That Achilles heel of a guy not being able now to trust anyone around him, and Bond playing that card as he grew into it. Also, another interesting thing is that when we did that, Cubby and John Glenn, great John Glenn, who I met. That's right. That's who Cubby introduced me to. Actually, that was the first meeting we had. We had Cubby and Michael, and then it was myself and John Glenn, and we got along famously. And John Glenn had so many different ideas, and he's just a master at characterization. And the iguana is a very funny story. You probably know about it, but they wanted me now to pick my girl. They wanted me to pick Sanchez's girlfriend, but they didn't want me to feel that I was put on the spot by being Sanchez. You know what I mean? Acting Sanchez out.
Yeah.
So they said, we want you to play Bond to these 17 actresses and models around the world to pick out the girl you have chemistry with.
It's a tough job.
Tough job.
I had the tough job of being Bond, James Bond.
Yeah.
And I now then had my proper subtle English accent and a whole other, and I was in great shape at the time and younger, and so there were these beautiful women I had to, be Bond to, and after looking at all the videos, and I knew immediately it was Talisa Soto. That's who Sanchez would want. He would risk his life. I had to find a girl. Sanchez would risk his life by going into, DEA territory to capture her back. And that was Talisa. And I said that to Cubby and John, and they said, we agree. And then what was
it about her? Sorry, I don't mean to interrupt you, but I'm dying to know, what was it about her that singled her out amongst all the other women?
Well, again, the freshness of her, there was an innocence about her. She had she was a Latina. I wanted somebody that, wasn't a blonde, blue-eyed actress. I didn't want that for Sanchez. I thought he would be attracted to her innocence, her youth, the way she moved. And there was a confidence about her, a defiance that she also had, a certain kind of defiance. And she wore this dress that they actually then fashioned and gave it to Carrie. They gave it to Carrie. the dress that she takes off the bottom and there's a gun.
Oh, yeah.
That was Talisa wore that to the audition, and they were fascinated by that dress. And Dana, who and Cubby, they all were very involved in the wardrobe ideas and stuff, and they incorporated that for Carrie's character, Pamela Bouvier. And interestingly, but so now they're watching the dailies of our screen testing for these girls, and John goes over to Cubby. He goes, Cubby, I think Robert would make a pretty good Bond. And Cubby says, I think so too. Cubby says, I think so too. And they were like, I said, come on, stop blowing smoke. And he said, no. Many true things, Cubby said in jest. And there was I always thought that'd be a story I told on shows like this, or to my kids, and they'd say he's full of shit. You know what I mean? Yeah, right. We're going to see Davi as a Bond guy, right? Okay, but John Glenn reiterated that in certain behind-the-scenes videos of interviews.
Yeah,
he does mention that.
Well, I will say with that British accent, I believe him. I think you could do a great job there.
Would have loved to have seen it.
Especially when I was in that shape. Back then I was like, full of piss and vinegar, and probably quite like the Ian Fleming Bond, because, had a bit scarring,
Yeah.
Well, Robert, let me ask you. He did such a great job. We definitely want to talk to you about that. But I wanted to know that, Sanchez, one of the most terrifying things about Sanchez is how real he was. He was not your typical, Bond supervillain. What did you do to prepare for the role? Did you get into like a full method of style of acting? What did you do to get into that role?
Okay, well, first off, the drug cartels, it was the Pablo Escobar and the Colombian drug lords, and had Carlos Leder, who was also fashioned, and then Escobar and Ochoa. They were the three main cartel guys at the time. And I started to research them. And Michael Wilson gave me a book called The Underground Empire, which really mapped out this whole amazing web of the worldwide drug cartel, which is still intact and still going strong. So, Bond always has the advantage of being ahead of its time in a lot of ways. The Bond films tackle a subject matter that is ahead of its time. And if you look at what's happening in Mexico right now, remember you're only president for life, and then controlling the government, business and all of that. I mean, life imitates art, and it's quite interesting when you think about that, but still relevant today. So what I did was I spoke to people that were Colombian and from Medellin. I spoke to, and then around Beverly Hills, you can probably find any kind of interesting character somewhere. I got to a gentleman who was the architect for one of Escobar's homes, and spoke to him about that and learned about the Paisa dialect, meaning Ave Maria pues hombre. They have a certain kind of Paisa talk from Medellin. And I went to the cumbia music, learned about the cumbia music and the Paso Pino horse and Lulu and Aguardiente and the whole culture of Colombia, and started listening to the music and started putting my character into the lines into Spanish, and I would say them in Spanish to then extract as much as I could from that, and then just settled. They wanted to settle. They didn't want a heavy duty accent, so I just then refined it and gave that flavor of Sanchez, which even in my relationship with Dario. Now, we know the Latino cultures are very affectionate. The men, they're not homophobic. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. So I made sure that with Dario, he was my either younger brother or a relative and that's why touching him, you know what I mean? Having
Yeah.
that, whether there was some autoerotica thing there with him or not, who knows? You know what I mean? But I wanted to suggest that there was no homophobic with Sanchez. So there were these subtle touches.
Yeah.
Big time.
know, and I remember even talking to Benicio when they put him in the thing. You know what I mean? They put him in the cremation thing where they rip, where he sees Pam Bouvier and he goes, "You're dead," and all of a sudden he's in
the grinder, yeah.
Yes.
In the grinder, and we talked about that. He goes, "What would he be saying?" I said, "Who's the closest person to him?" And I said, "Sanchez." I said, "Well, that's who he'd be calling for." And we had. So anyway, there was tons of. So the preparation was basically that, and then having the idea of a man that had ultimate power of life and death in a certain way in his country, and I would then go out, and we shot in Mexico, and I would go out with Talisa and Benicio and whoever, but I was Sanchez.
Wow.
I would act like Sanchez.
Yeah.
Because it was.
Sounds like fun.
You can't always. Yeah, you know what? When you're an actor, you want to have fun, right?
Yeah.
So what better way to enter a restaurant than to think you're a Colombian drug lord?
In Mexico in the late 80s, I bet. With a beautiful woman.
It's like,
sounds fantastic.
Yes, and so it was even that. Like, I remember even when we went to Mexico City, that we were at one hotel, and I went around to another part of the town, and I found this new hotel, and I wound up making a deal for the getting a hotel room with a piano in it,
right.
and had a suite. It was a lot of fun.
What were your memories of working with Benicio then? Because I think that was only his second film. He's obviously a legend these days. But did you spot any of that stuff in him early on, or was he still a bit of a rough diamond back in those days?
Well, no, we talked a lot about acting because he used to call me his mentor, and I then did Columbus with him, with John Glenn. I recommended him to John to be in Columbus with us, and. Spending 5 months very closely every day. And I was a proponent of the Actors Studio and Stella Adler. And then Benicio went and studied with someone from the Adler Studio. And he was a very committed artist. And he saw, and it was fun. We had a lot of fun.
Could you tell even back then that he was on a trajectory to stardom? Did you have? Does it come as a surprise that he had the success following that film that he did?
No, that's all in choices, and there's a lot of different things that go into making that. And he had the intelligence. He came from a good family. His father was a lawyer in Puerto Rico. He's an intelligent, artistic guy with a offbeat sensibility and a smart understanding of the work. So, and committed to it, you know what I mean? And he was smart in terms of waiting out. Like what he did, which what I didn't do, was I got married, and then I had I had I was getting a lot of offers for other films, big money for bullshit movies, let's say, that I maybe shouldn't have done, and I did them. And he was waiting out 18 months before he took his next project, and that's something that I should have waited out. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because I was on that path. I went around the world for 4.5 months to promote the Bond films.
Wow.
Every major city. And, Bond made more money than Batman and Lethal Weapon around the world.
Around the world, yeah.
Not in the States, but around the world. It was,
It killed it everywhere but the States, really, right? If I got the numbers correct.
And that's what what was stupid, that's what hurt me in a way, is because I was on a plane with Barry Spikings, who was the head of Nelson Entertainment at the time, who understood the foreign market. Because in 1990, not many people understood the foreign market like they do today. And Barry Spiking said to me, bring a project to me. And you're worth $17 million foreign. This is 1990. He could raise $17 million with me foreign. And I did a show called Wise Guy, which was in television, which I shouldn't have done. I did an arc of that because Jerry Lewis had done it and Kevin Spacey, but they hadn't had the career yet that I did. I mean, that they did, but Spacey hadn't had the film career yet when he did Wise Guy. It was a move. For me, it was now confusing to be in this major Bond film and now go back into the small screen in 1990. That wasn't looked at, you know what I mean, like it is today.
Yeah.
And I should have just waited and done a film. I told the agency what Barry had said, and no one really was. I guess I was underrepresented at the time, and you have to have really good, strong, smart representation.
Sure.
But anyway,
well, you've got one of the greatest resumes, out there. I mean, you always in films that we all love, and once you show up, we know something exciting is going to happen. So, we're blessed with some great films that you bring so much to. And wanted to real quickly, I wanted to circle back around to John Glenn, working with John Glenn. He did 5 Bond films in a row, which is in this day and age is just unheard of. Usually if the director comes back around after the second film, they usually say something along the lines of they have nothing left to give, which basically means John Glenn is the man. He's gone on the record saying that License to Kill is his best Bond film. As far as it being an actor, how was John Glenn to work with? I mean, was he an actor's actor? Was he more technical? Did he give you room to ad-lib? Could you talk a little bit about working with John Glenn?
John Glenn is probably one of the most underrated great directors. He gives it all. He has a sense of film, a sense of pacing, a sense of character, a sense of humor, a sense of enabling the actor to there's no judgment in you know what I mean, trying something, and always with a wonderful sense of humor that he has, which is great for the set because it brings a sense of humor to even difficult moments. He was just, I told the story, and it's quite cute. The iguana that I had. Well, the iguana wasn't friendly to Lisa Soto. It was friendly to me. I could be perched on my shoulder, and there are outtakes that probably are hysterical of the iguana talking to me, like whispering in my ear, and I improvise. What? You don't trust her, huh? You know what I mean, and stuff like that. And John loved that. And there was a moment when we were, and I'm acting with Lisa, and we're in the casino, or I forget what the exact scene it was. And I hear behind the camera, John going, "Alex, get Tyler. He's marvelous. Look at those eyes. He's fantastic. Look at him. I can't believe it. He's just absolutely marvelous. He's fun. Yes, look at that. It's so exquisite. Look at that. He conveys so much with just a look. I want a close-up of that. Get that key right there. Put it down and give it to him. And I'm pumped up. I'm going, look at that. John Glenn was what, legendary guy on Bonds with every kind of, and here he is, like, mesmerized by my performance. Talent. And I'm feeling this inside, and then, all right, it's cut, and he walks over to me, and I expect him to, put his hand on my shoulder and tell me how marvelous I am. And he bends over and he looks into the face of the iguana. He goes, "You're just a marvelous creature. You're a natural actor. You know that? You're just so fantastic." And he's now complimenting the iguana. And then, of course, it was a send-up. You know what I mean? He laughed hysterically, and we still laugh about it today. Because I was like, I thought, what about me, John? You know what I mean? Come on, John. He just went So that John is just so great. You know, you can have walls crashing in around you, and John knows how to handle it. It's just amazing.
That's a beautiful
And
thing.
like I said, with character and with you know, he just knows. He knows how to make actors look good. He knew. Let's, for instance, there's this line that Benicio says. Okay, we're going to give her a nice honeymoon, right? You remember that?
Yeah, of course.
Oh yeah.
All right, that's a very offbeat reading. You know what I mean? A lot of people would not maybe understand that. They could maybe have not understood that line reading. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
You know, don't go honeymoon. That's a little corny. Say honeymoon, please. You know, whatever the guy might say, whatever the director might. John understood that and loved it. You know what I mean?
That's a beautiful thing. Yeah,
that
absolutely.
shows his sensibility.
So what were you saying about you know, him handling, you know, walls crashing down everywhere? License to Kill was famous for being quite a troubled production. Lots of things going wrong, left, right, and center. Lots of challenges on set. What's your memory of that kind of stuff?
You know, it's very strange because the only thing I remember is Cubby not feeling well up at that high altitude, and everyone worried about that. But as for other production problems, I don't remember any of those. They kept those from the actors, man. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
If there was such issues, we didn't know about it, nor I didn't know about it, or there wasn't, you know what I mean? It was never, and come to think about it, every subsequent Bond I've heard, there's always some bullshit around it. You know what I mean? Oh, there's having a problem with the last one, right?
Mm-hmm.
They had all these, you know, maybe it's just part of the marketing tool of it. I don't know. But they know how to take care of the issues. You know, if there was an issue with cameras or some kind of, because you're filming in different parts of the world, there was a guy that was one of the great lawyers, considered one of the most powerful men of Hollywood, a man called Sidney Korshak, who Robert Evans talks about, but he was considered the most powerful. He was very close to Cubby Broccoli. I would have a lunch or a dinner with Cubby Broccoli, Sidney Korshak, and Frank Sinatra.
Wow!
At Cubby's house. Look up Sidney Korshak. So when there were issues, sometimes there's a book written about the guy. When there were issues, they used to call up Sidney, and problems would be worked out at times. You know, also early on when they had told me they wanted me for the Bond guy, the baddie. Of course, every major agency and talent wants to now, you know, they're putting forward their talent, right, for the part. But it was my part. Cubby said to me, "You're going to hear a lot of stuff on the street. Don't worry about it. You're going to be the Bond villain." And that was part of the whatchamacallit. So it came down to the now final moments, and the studio was giving Cubby, because some big names were like thrown about, and they're giving him some issues, and with Sinatra, and Sinatra says to Cubby, "Come on, just give it to the Italian kid." You know what I mean? Meaning me, because I did my first film with Sinatra, 1977.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So there was that. And Cubby was, you know, it was all, they told me that later on. They encouraged practical jokes. We did a lot of practical jokes, and Benicio and I had a good sense of humor with practical jokes, along with John Glenn. And I would do them to Anthony Stark, who played Truman Lodge, my accountant at the time. To start cutting over. I don't know if you know the story about one of the things I did to him. You ever hear that story?
Let's hear it. I don't know.
Well, we were on the set, and they used, sometimes if they didn't have something, there's an old theater trick that you take cork, and you know, like a wine cork, and you burn it, and then the residue creates a shadowing. You know what I mean? You could use that for shading on different things, or for hair. You know what I mean?
Right. Yeah.
If you have and the cork is up on the countertop, and Benicio and I are in the trailer, you know, hanging, the makeup trailer hanging, and just talking about stuff. And Anthony comes in, in and he goes, "Oh, wow, what's this?" And he picks it up and goes, "Oh, no, leave that alone." I goes, that's hashish. He goes, "What?" I goes, "It's hash." So he picks it and he puts it to his nose, and as he puts it to his nose, I go, "Well, here, smell." On his nose, okay, and it made a black mark, because it's like a piece of coal.
Yeah,
it's not hot or anything, but it made a mark on his nose. And me and Benicio laughing is, well, poor Anthony breaks out and hides. He literally gets upset.
No.
So yeah, he got upset, and that night I remember John Glenn coming down, laughing. He said, "Robert, what did you do to poor Anthony Starr?" I go, "What do you mean?" He's all upset, talking to Barbara. He says, what did you do? You know what I mean? It was like, I was like the bad, whenever it was something, it was Davi. You know what I mean? It was, I was just being Sanchez, I guess.
Yeah.
So Barbara had a conversation with me, about poor Anthony Stark. But that was funny.
It's a great story.
That's amazing. I love it. I was surprised that didn't make it into the script after that.
Also, there was a story about Don Stroud, and Benicio told the story, but totally ass backwards. I can't believe Benicio, the way he told the story, how it happened. How it happened was Benicio and I are in my suite in Key West, Florida, when Don Stroud has to come. And Don Stroud plays, Keller.
Yeah.
Or Helen, my head of security. And I hadn't met him yet. So I invite him up, like Sanchez would, to my suite. But I did it in this way. I called his room, and this is like, the guy just got in. I go, "Hello, he said, Don, this is John Glenn. Can you please come up to the hotel suite? We want to just have a quick little run through of things." He goes, "You mean now? Now you want me now?" No, I knew that Don Stroud had been drinking and having a party. And he had a girl in his room. Okay. So,
yeah.
All right. So now we're waiting, and the guy comes in to the room, but, all discombobulated. He had rushed over. Even his hair was crooked. You know what I mean? He came in the room, and he just looked at the two of us sitting on the couch and then laughing. And then I locked him in his room one night. But it's funny how we just had so many fun escapades during the shooting.
I bet it sounds and looks like a party.
One thing we need to ask you, obviously, is what was your relationship like with Timothy? Because obviously, being the main man, villain versus hero, what was that whole like with you, especially with you going method? What was that like?
Yes, Timothy was great. We would go out in Mexico City, and we would do the Muppets. Muppets are where you take tequila and you put 7-Up in a shot glass and you slam it down and you chug it. Nice. So we would do the Muppets together. And Timothy had a mutual. We liked each other, I think, right away, right from that first lunch. We just Timothy is just a giving person.
Yeah,
he's just a wonderful person. He really is, and we hit it off and had mutual respect and just enjoyed playing with each other in that film, on and off the screen. We had a lot of fun, and there was it was just a very, very easy play off of each other.
Well, Timothy was obviously the guy that took it super seriously, wasn't it? He went back to the books, and he really took it seriously. And by the sounds of things, you were taking Sanchez really seriously as well. So, like, do you remember Yeah. Do you remember the first time you kind of read together, like the first scene you ever did together as Bond and Sanchez?
I don't remember that, but I do remember again Bond and the villain. Mirroring each other.
Yeah.
So and I don't know all the ins and outs of some things, but I do remember, and it's kind of a clue to something. But I remember John Glenn. I remember the one-liners. Timothy wasn't fast on the one-liners. You know what I mean?
Mm.
Those quips. It wasn't like really the quips.
Yeah.
And then and I had a lot of quips. Sanchez had. I enjoyed those. You know what I mean? Again, that's what made Sanchez. Time to start cutting overhead or launder it. You know what I mean? Sanchez had a lot of those Bondian one-liners.
Yeah.
And that was the mirror imaging. That was a very clever structuring thing. And I remember them showing Timothy, I think, the first moment of Sanchez going in there. What did you promise him? His heart, give him his heart. That whole sequence there, where we come in and we shoot the thing in the introduction, which was very strong. And I think that also then led into a stylistic thing where the two of us were these two heavyweights. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
That are going to be some point have to combat each other in a certain way.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember something there in that. But basically, the early conversations of both having a sense of danger. The charm and the sense of danger.
Yeah. Whenever I see you in a film, I can't wait to see you unleash on somebody. For example, the scene where Sanchez pushes Milton Crest into the pressure chamber with all the money. It kind of reminds me of like Michael Caine in the 60s. When he got mad very quick, very sharp. And I've always wanted to ask you, where does that come from? Your ability to do that is something to behold. And you've done it in several films. Is that just your upbringing? Is that like, how do you do that?
Well, first off, you're building. I love the opera. I'm Italian.
Got it.
I mean, there's a pack. There's a. I did again like my first film with Sinatra. I'm singing all the time. Sing that. It's a passion. It's just a thing that happens. Your own life force, your passion. But as you're building your character. And there's an incident I'll bring into about another film, that frustrating incident on my behalf. But you play the character, and some people expect you to get angry at a certain point. But if you're not angry at that certain point, you don't have to portray it. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
You don't have to be. You know what I mean? Like in other words. Even from the opening line, what did he promise you? His heart? Give him his heart. You know what I mean? That could have been said pissed off, right? Angry, real angry. You know what I mean? As opposed to not really letting it. So you hold back. You hold back on the pedestrian anger. A pedestrian anger is that would be considered a pedestrian anger. That the jealousy is a pedestrian jealousy. But the idea that is enraging in society and in culture, when you can click into the James Joyce said, the uncreated conscience of my race, the rage that someone may feel at a certain incident. Now, where you breast Milton Crest, the ultimate act of betrayal.
Yeah.
When I trust this guy, and you're building up the suspicion, and then you find out the thing. You know what I mean? So that's built into that, and then you leave it with that. Launder it. You know what I mean? You bring it into there. It's the same thing like when the shit hits the fan upstairs. Remember when all the fires start to happen and the whole thing starts to fall apart?
Yeah.
And Bond is on the conveyor belt and he's, trying to get off before he goes into the grinder.
Oh yeah.
And I tell him, go get Heller. You know what I mean? Yeah. I have that explosion up there. See, that's all. It's just an organic thing. I'm not trying to push anything onto it. It has to happen organically. And I did a film one time, the Terrorist on Trial film. And this was with Sam Waterston as the prosecutor, who was a fine actor. And he was the prosecutor in this film, prosecuting the Palestinian. And Ron Liebman was my Jewish defense attorney. And I knew from the beginning, studying these guys and the situation, the high intelligence, that they have, knowing that they're going to be on the world stage, the cleverness, the intellectual, and So I portrayed the character a certain way with a knowledge of understanding he was on the world platform and how he was going to be, he wanted to be in control of that platform. Now, when it came to the time for the prosecution, Sam Waterston wanted me, I call it asshole energy. He wanted this fake energy to come back at him from my character, instead of my character looking at him, understanding that he's trying to manipulate him. You understand?
Mm-hmm.
And Sam wouldn't let it go to its logical conclusion that my explosion would happen when it was going to happen organically, because he wanted me to hit the ball back harder so he can build instead of taking it. And I hate to criticize the interpretation of it, but the director 6 months later came to me and said, "You taught me a great lesson," because him and Sam took me in a room and said, "Come out and play. You're not playing." And that was all bullshit about playing. You know what I mean? It was not about that. It was about my interpretation of those moments. And Spencer Tracy would have come at it maybe from this angle. That's not working. That angle. The prosecution didn't have to be hitting home points. You see what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
But it wanted like this prosecution to be affecting him instead of finding the incident where he does crack, like Humphrey Bogart in the Caine Mutiny Court Martial. You know what I mean? There's a certain point when that's going to, then the strawberries, there's going to be something that clicks off in him organically. So it's been in my gut for all these years that was compromised in me, because I was a younger actor before the Bond film. And you were forced into a situation. And like I said, the guy's a terrific actor. I'm not taking anything away from that. But my process on that was totally... so it's interesting. It's into the complexities of all that. I find it interesting.
Yeah, you have your rhythm with regards to, let's say, anger is uniquely yours. It's identifiable, and it's great to watch. I think anyone could on a certain point hit a mark and suddenly be angry. But like with you, I don't know. It's almost it's like I guess it's performance art. It's uniquely different. I don't know how else to describe it, but it's great to watch. I'm always excited to see what happens next. Brings a smile to my face when you get angry, to watch you get angry. So I have to know this. I'm a huge Sinatra fan, and I know you are as well. And I know your show is centered around Sinatra classics. And the question I've always wanted to ask you, and it can't be the greatest hits. You can take one Sinatra album to the desert island. Which of all of his albums is your favorite album?
Oh God! I mean, that's
Only the Lonely.
It's a tough one.
Yeah, I think about this often.
There's just too many, because there's bits and pieces of different songs and stuff that he hit on later on, and then we did, and then there's so many. I don't know which one. I would have to.
We'll best have this conversation over a drink sometime.
Yeah, that's a whole other ball of wax, because some of them don't have some of the later songs that are terrific. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Some of the, something like there's a couple of songs that are just. Like this, a song that John Denver did called "Sad Song." That's not on a lot of albums, but or the gal that got away. That the thing he does with "Never Entered My Mind" and the gal that got away, or how he puts those together, or "Violets for Your Furs" with last night when we were young, and "Here Comes That Rainy Day." He strings those three together. There's so many different things that he's done. I mean, he's got 3,000 songs he recorded.
Yeah.
And,
I think things got interesting when he moved away from Capitol and started his own label. I kind of like that era.
Well, yes, there's some great stuff there, but also there's some marvelous, some of the marvelous stuff, like you said, Only the Lonely. I mean, there's some great stuff on that. There's some Sinatra and strings. I mean, the Nelson Riddle recordings of, I just recently got also the masters from that whole Capitol album, whole Capitol series.
Wow.
I got
nice.
I bought what the masters were made from. I mean, what the records made from. It's the, because for every printings, they need new masters. You know what I mean?
Sure.
So I got all and the sound on these things are just incredible.
Nice.
Just sounding, playing. Yeah.
Where did you say you kept those again? Sounds great. That sounds great. Tell us about your show. I mean, you're touring the world right now. You're singing Sinatra songs. Correct me if I'm wrong. And how did this all come about?
Well, it's the American Songbook. Have you heard any of this stuff yet or not?
Yes.
Okay. Some of the stuff on YouTube or the album? Did you see
on YouTube. On YouTube.
Oh, okay. Well, first off, I had always sung. I studied opera in Florence and in New York at Juilliard with Dan Farrow and Samuel Margulies, who taught Robert Merrill. And being, of Italian descent, there were two figures in the Italian household, the Pope and Sinatra, and not necessarily in that order. So I probably first heard Sinatra in utero, in my mother's belly,
I'm sure.
And he was also an iconic film figure. So anyone that had any kind of singing ability and or wanting to act, you look to Dean Martin and Frank Sinatra. Both those iconic figures had changed the idea of what the Italian was in film and in the music world. So and I loved opera. That's just something ingraining, and it was part of my youth. So I strained my voice. I was a baritone with the heart of a tenor. And what does that mean? That means in the opera, most of the tenors are the romantic leads and the baritones are the bad guys. And I didn't like singing the bad guy songs. I wanted to sing the lover, the romantic. So I strained my vocal cord. I rushed doing that, and I strained, and at the same time I was winning awards for singing. I was winning awards for acting. I was first place in both those in New York State. And I left the singing alone, peppered it in things, in a humorous way, like in Goonies. That was never in the script. I improvised that, and some other things. And then I directed a film, The Dukes, in 2008 that won 9 awards. And I sang one song in that. It was about a doo-wop group. And then people were saying, "Hey, you should go back to singing."
Oh,
what
nice.
Did you sing?
Yeah.
And I felt that I didn't want to do the opera. But I felt that Sinatra, who had passed in 1998, that now there was a moment for me to do this music since he had been gone. And I didn't think there was anybody doing it quite like perhaps what I could bring to it because of, again, the film career that I had, the edge that I have, and the same, there was similarities to Sinatra, being the Sicilian, and anyway. So I did after that film, I put together a demo of 4 songs at Capitol Records, and I brought them to Bob Cavallo, a friend of mine, was the head of Disney Music, and he was one of the great managers of music acts like Prince and Atlantis Morissette and Earth, Wind and Fire and Paula Abdul, just a legendary music guy, Cavallo. So I brought it to him up at Disney, and he said, "You want the truth?" I go, "Yeah." So he brought down his marketing team, and he put it in, and after 30 seconds, they said, "Let's do it." So that has encouraged me to do the whole album. Nice. And while I was at Capitol doing the demo, the woman that runs Capitol, Paula Salvatore, she runs Capitol. She's a legend there. She told Phil Ramone and Al Schmidt, people had been hearing me sing. And she told these legendary guys about me. And I met Phil Ramone, who produced Sinatra and Barbra Streisand and all of Billy Joel, one of the great record producers. And he agreed to then produce my album, Davi Sings Sinatra, On the Road to Romance.
Wow.
And we did the album at Capitol and with the best musicians. It went to number 6 on Billboard Jazz, my first album. And we put the show together. Davi Sings Sinatra, a tribute to Sinatra, the great American Songbook, and America. And that was and I felt that because the country and the world was so divided, I wanted to remind people the contribution that America has and our culture had on them. People learning English through the Sinatra songs or through American culture and songs. And he was such an iconic figure, I guess, again, around the world. His Picasso's contribution to music and his contribution to society as a humanitarian. And so I had this burning need to then want to tour and then do the music and bring a message through song, which is such a huge part that I denied of myself, that I felt like I now was let out of prison. And because again, to express through the music is just the highest. It just is so. I am so blessed and thankful. And I just started traveling the world, and I did 6,000 people the first time I came to Estonia, 3,000 in Budapest, standing ovations for 10 minutes or so. And
amazing.
When I get pissed at the film world, I'll put the tape in of those people cheering for me for 10 minutes, 12 minutes. That's it. I go, screw you. Can you do this? All right. All right. All right. You played another friggin' wise guy, but can you do this? How's that?
Yeah.
Right? Can you get
amazing.
6,000 people for 12 minutes to cheer you on? So anyway,
that's exciting.
Yes, but it was very exciting. And so that kind of was the genesis of wanting to do this, to do the music. Now, Sinatra did not write the songs, so, and I'm not, if you saw the quote Quincy Jones left on his Facebook page after he took 17 people to come see me, he says, it's an anomaly that I sound like him, but I'm still myself. Wow. Many people try, but not many have the voice, the stagger, the swagger, and whatnot. And anyway, beautiful tribute he put on his Facebook page after my show. And,
amazing.
So it's not I'm not a Sinatra impersonator. There are many of those, and it's not that at all. It's an experience that I create. That there's a kindred in terms of my. I call Sinatra the first method singer because he personalized the lyric to such an extent. They were crooners at that point, but they weren't guys that moved your soul so deeply. And that's what I try to do in the show. I try to create an event, and I try to open up the human spirit and our hearts. But so that's kind of that's again, it's the American Songbook that I'm singing.
Yeah,
he really only had like his hand in maybe 4 or 5 songs where he did lyrics to. He helped with the lyric.
Yeah.
Well, we need to know when we can come and see you live. Then, where are the next dates?
Well, I'll be in Helsinki. Well, I'll be in Estonia, actually, December 18th. Another show. I already did 4 shows in Estonia here in Tallinn. I'll be in Helsinki on December 19th at the Finlandia Opera House or whatever that's. It's Finlandia. It's a beautiful, beautiful venue. And then I'll be in December 20th in Tartu, Estonia. Then I go to Capri. I won't be singing there. That's a film festival. Then I'll go to New York on January 25th at Birdland, the Birdland Theater in New York City, January 25th. And then at Vibrato in Los Angeles, Herb Alpert's Vibrato Jazz Club. I'll be there on February 5th. And then I'll be back in Estonia February 8th doing a special performance for one of the great environmental men, people that are getting an award. But so that's kind of where, and in between I'll be filming on stuff. Yeah.
Fantastic. And Robert, where can people find you? Are you on social media?
Yes, at Robert John Davi. Don't get nervous about my politics.
Okay. You've been warned. Okay, great.
Yeah, well, don't get nervous about the politics.
Okay.
I'm outspoken. And
that's great.
We all have a point of view, and then I'm on at Robert Davi on Instagram.
Okay.
And then Facebook, you'll see.
Beautiful stuff. I'm sure our listeners will come along and see the show. I know, John, you're planning to go to the LA date. Yeah,
absolutely. We'll get a bunch of James Bond Radio fans together and definitely come see you on February 5th. I'm super excited to see the show. Yeah.
I have a sad thing. I found out last night that a good friend of mine who played with Frank Sinatra since 1959. And when this guy heard me sing, he left me a wonderful tribute. His name is Emil Radocchio, one of the greatest vibe players in the world. He was part of the legendary Wrecking Crew, best friends with George Harrison, played with every major jazz, just a legendary vibraphonist. He toured the world with Sinatra and played on a lot of the records and, so many different things with Avi Shankar. And he passed away at 87 years old. And he traveled with me around the world. I brought him to Pescara with me, and found out last night that he passed away in the arms of his wife at 87. He told her, "I'm tired, honey," and she took him to bed, put her arms around him, and he expired very peacefully.
Wow.
And So Emil Richards, he wrote a book called "My Life Behind Bars," meaning the bars of a vibraphone.
That's very clever. I'll have to check that out.
Nice.
Yeah, check it out, because he's one of the great players, legendary musician.
Beautiful stuff. I know the name. Yeah, that name sounds very familiar to me.
Yeah, Emil Richards is really Emilio Radocchio, but I'll give a little tribute to him on February 5th on that night in Vibrato Jazz, and also at the Birdland. I'll bring up a little bit of. If you go to YouTube and you Robert Davi Pennies from Heaven. If you type that in, Pennies from Heaven, Robert Davi, or the Davi Sinatra 100th anniversary, there's 3 songs there we did live that I released for Sinatra's birthday. Besides Davi Sings Sinatra on the Road to Romance, you'll see the vibraphone solo of Emil Richards there.
Okay.
And what a great player. He had such a beautiful tone.
Wonderful. We'll make sure to put that on the website, on the Facebook page, so all the listeners can check that out for sure.
Beautiful stuff. Before we wrap up, Robert, would you mind recording a couple of sound bites for us? Just you saying, "Hi, this is Robert Davi, and you're listening to the music of Bond on James Bond Radio."
The music of Bond?
Yes, please. Yeah. So once more, it'll be, "Hi, this is Robert Davi, and you're listening to the music of Bond on James Bond Radio."
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Tell me when.
Whenever you're ready, go for it.
Hi, this is Robert Davi, and you're listening to the music of Bond on James Bond Radio.
Beautiful
Hi,
stuff.
This is Robert Davi, and you're listening to the music of Bond. I'll do a bunch of them in succession for you.
All right.
All right?
Cool.
Shut the fuck up for a second.
You just made my day. That was great.
All right. Hi, this is Robert Davi, and you're listening to the music of Bond on James Bond Radio. Hi, this is Robert Davi, and you're listening to the music of Bond on James Bond Radio. Shaken, not stirred. There you go.
That was a beautiful one. If you wouldn't mind doing one more, which is just, "Hi, this is Robert Davi, and you're listening to James Bond Radio," that would be great.
Okay. Hi, this is Robert Davi, and you're listening to James Bond Radio. Hi, this is Robert Davi, and you're a lucky sucker. You're listening to James Bond Radio.
That was beautiful. Thank you so much. That was great.
And Robert, we have one last question for you. James Bond radio listener Alma is dying to know if you and Wayne Newton ever sang together on set for fun.
No, we never did. We never sang together, me and Wayne, but we did a concert. I did a concert for the Friars Club, big thing for Sinatra's 100th anniversary. Dionne Warwick, myself, and Wayne Newton sang, and Dina Martin, I think, sang, and Steve Tyrell. We gave a nice concert there, sang a few songs for
Nice.
that, but didn't sing a duet, nor did we sing on the Bond film.
Got it.
But we became friends there. Yeah, Wayne
Wonderful.
was a very sweet person. Yeah.
Yeah, he's great in the film as well. He plays that character. You can tell he's having a lot of fun with it.
Yes, right. Isn't that funny?
Well, Robert, thank you so much again for coming on the show. You've been very generous through the years to all of us James Bond fans, and it just means the world to us that you came on the show today. So this has really been a dream come true for both Tom and I and all the JBR family. So thank you again so much for your time, and we are all looking forward to seeing you on the road.
Well, I hope so. On the road to romance, and blessings to everyone, and thanks again for the opportunity, guys. And I hope all the people will go to get the album Davi Sings Sinatra, and Godspeed, everyone.
Beautiful stuff. Thank you so much, Robert. We really appreciate it.
All right. Bye, guys.
Mate, how cool was that?
Unbelievable. Man, what a cool guy. I knew it was going to be an amazing interview, but he superseded all expectations.
Yeah.
The stories are amazing. I feel like we could have gone on and on.
That's the thing is, man, something like I'm sitting here with a big old list of questions in front of me, and obviously you are as well. And you give a lot of thought to what you're going to ask, and you never know until you start rolling what you're going to get on the other side. Sometimes an interviewee waits to be guided by your questions. Sometimes you ask them one question and then they just go and they take the reins, and those are always my favorite ones because you get the best stories and it comes out so naturally. And he's such a natural talker, man. That was so much fun. And Sanchez told us to shut the fuck up as well, which is great.
Oh man. And he did it with a smile. It was just incredible. And I can't wait to go back and revisit the film. I feel like some of the things he was pointing out, specifically, that Sanchez never did anything until it was done to him, was kind of like I never thought of it that way. I think the next time I see License, it's going to be like from a whole fresh perspective.
Yeah, I want to go and watch it now. I tell you what was great about that is that you can see, like when we were talking about the whole anger side of things and how he kind of taps into that and how much thought he gave everything. It wasn't like, he just rocked up on the day and was like, you want the money, then take it. And that was it. It just came out. It was like, he really thought about all that stuff, and that was for me, one of the most interesting parts is to think about it, to hear about that thought process that he went through to kind of like really tap into things. And you can hear that in him as well, can't you? Sometimes when he gets passionate about a subject, as he was talking to us there, you can tell that there's that little sort of, there's that spark in him that comes out,
Yeah. And yeah, exactly. That thing that turns on a dime, you could see, where he just commands your attention. So super, super cool guy. That was
I tell you what, though, when he first answered the phone, I am regretting calling him a naughty villain. That wasn't the coolest intro for me. I will put my hands up and say it.
Yeah.
But it came out of my mouth. I don't know where it came from.
I quickly thought, I'm so glad Tom's talking and it's not me right now, because I was actually a little nervous.
Yeah, me too. Well, he's like you say, like he sort of hinted at the end there. If you follow him on Twitter, he's a big fan of the sort of Twitter or Instagram rant about political matters and stuff like that. So and knowing Sanchez as a character, and just know, like you say, you can't wait to see him flip out on screen and go crazy at somebody. So you never know quite who you're going to get at the other end of the phone sometimes with actors and that, do you? So it was one moment of like, hello, is that Mr. Davi on the other end?
Yeah.
And then, you just don't know what you're going to get.
It has to be noted, JVR listeners, that we spent a good 5 minutes before calling him, like, do we call him Mr. Davi? Do we call him Robert? Do we call him RD? Like, we had no idea.
Yeah.
When he first picked up the phone, I remember thinking, oh, I'm so glad, Tom, you're talking first.
Yeah.
Like, I couldn't, it was nerve wracking a bit, Sanchez, for Christ's sake.
Yeah, absolutely.
And you know what? And he's not, you're right. The more I was listening to him talk, the more I realized that he really is, like, his spin, his take on a Bond baddie is really a real person. He's not the some sort of caricature, of this bad guy, world domination. Felt like a very real person.
Well, that's it. It's like when you look at Bond villains of the past and you look at somebody, I don't know, you look at Teehee, you look at Jaws, even Odd Job, they're sort of exaggerated, fantastical versions of reality, but then you look at Sanchez, and what's so terrifying about Sanchez is that there are Sanchez's out there for real. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And they're out there today. I mean, you go and watch Narcos, and that's, all that. Like, the crazy thing about Narcos is I went deep on Narcos in recent times. And you wonder, you watch a show like that, based on historical events, and you're like, I wonder how much of that is real and how much is that is, just done for the show kind of thing. And I went deep on reading a lot of books about that story, Pablo Escobar and all that kind of stuff, and the Cali cartel and all that stuff. I read the books of the people that the show is based on and the people that would appear in that show. And damn it, man, so much of that stuff was real, like absolutely, absolute truth going on there. And that's terrifying. And you believe that when you look at Sanchez, you really do believe that he's capable of those things. And it's one of those things, isn't it? When you look at any villain, they're justified in their own mind, aren't they? You know what I mean? They think they're doing the right thing on some level. You look at Hugo Drax, and he thinks that obviously mankind are just terrible, and he wants to start fresh. And as crazy as and maniacal as that is, in his own mind, he's justified that, and he thinks that's the right thing to do. As crazy as that sounds. But we're hearing that the thought that he had there of Sanchez not doing anything until it was first done to him puts Sanchez on a whole different level. I think I'm going to go back. I'm going to watch that through completely fresh eyes. And dude, I already just thinking through that film as you go through, and like already I'm thinking of those scenes where Tim's undercover, Bond's undercover, and they're sitting across from each other, and Sanchez is serving him tea and all that kind of stuff. Like there's going to be so many extra levels to those kinds of scenes now when you think about it.
Yeah, totally. Going back to what you were saying about, the preparation for the role, I get that. Why it was so real is I get the feeling Robert really probably knew some of these guys, in real life, and part of his research. Really the work he does as an actor, specifically with that role, shines through as a result of, him being, just a consummate professional, an actor of the highest caliber. And I have a sort of a newfound respect for that after talking to him. Killing Pablo. Did you read that one?
Do you know what I read? I read one. The last one I read was At the Devil's Table, which was about the what season are we up to on Narcos now? It was basically the main dude from the Cali cartel season.
Got it.
The security guy. That was the last book I read.
It.
I'm reading it and I'm like, holy shit! I can't believe that actually happened. I thought that was just over dramatized stuff.
Yeah. Yeah, amazing, truly amazing. Wow, what a life! What a great guy! And everyone get over and check out his website and social media, and be sure to catch some of the shows he's going to do. I can't wait.
Well, how was that for you? I thought I would just sit back, put my feet up, and let the two of you go at the end there. When Sinatra came up, obviously you're a huge Sinatra geek, aren't you? So to
totally.
chat Sinatra with Sanchez, man, how was that for you, baby?
I mean, that's as good as it gets. It's got to be. I've got to let everyone know it's Monday morning at 2:30, 2 in the morning here, and I rallied in the middle of the night to do this, and I've never been happier. I'm wide awake now. That's going to be a problem.
That's why John's not on camera. I said, come on, let's get the camera on, and he's like, no, I'm sitting here in my underpants. It's not happening.
That's exactly. I'm sitting here half naked in my underwear talking to Sanchez.
Yeah.
So it was totally cool, and I can't wait to go to the show. And like I said, we got to get a bunch of fans together and all go. And the other thing that I was thinking is he's done a couple of the screenings here in LA, and we got to put together a screening where we reunite him with Benicio and have a Q&A. Doesn't that need to happen?
Well,
so I'm gonna work on that.
We should mention. I saw on Twitter the other day. And by the time this goes out, I don't know whether this will already have been gone. But I saw Grand L. Bush, who obviously was on the show before, was tweeted that he was going to be at a screening of Die Hard, and Robert was going to be showing up to that. So he's around, and he does do those kinds of appearances. Yeah. So that would be cool, man, to nail those. That's almost like a get on the plane and fly over for kind of event.
You better believe it. You better believe it. We went to a screening that he did a Q&A of, and I sat diagonally behind him. I think I told this story before, but I was kind of watching him, watch himself, and he, really just sort of right down the middle, no emotion, except for when Q came on. And as soon as Q came on the screen, Robert had this huge grin on his face. I wanted to ask him about it, but I thought it might sound a little weird. Hey, last year I was staring at you in a movie theater. I didn't think that might not translate well with Sanchez. But Robert Davi, Benicio del Toro, Q&A, License to Kill screening, gotta happen.
Absolutely, man. And talking about the Grand L. Bush interview, we have to say a big thank you to our other man in LA, Matthew Chernov, who did that interview with Grand L. Bush. He was the man who set this interview up for us. So huge thank you to you, Matt. Because I remember I tweeted at Robert years ago now saying, listen, we'd love to have you on the show. And he said, sure. And I was like, brilliant, we've got Sanchez. But then it was like, okay, do you have an email address? How do we get in touch? And then the communication kind of just stopped happening. He obviously had other things to do. And then it was like, damn it, we got so close to Sanchez and then we missed out. And then it was through Matt's hard work there. And I won't say badgering Robert, but like basically putting a little bit of the pressure on there to make it happen. So thank you for that, Matt.
Totally.
Much appreciated.
Yeah, Matt, I've seen some of Matt's emails, and he's a great writer, and he's got the magic touch. Whenever we get together, I always start dropping names, just to see if maybe he'll contact some of those people. Hey, man, what do you think about John Taylor?
Pierce Brosnan lives around here.
Yeah,
that's it. Yeah,
that's it. Oh, yeah, you're right. Big thank you, Matt, for making this happen.
Big time. Thank you, Matt. It was Matt. Do you remember Matt took us on a tour of the graveyard in
that's right.
Hollywood? Was it Hollywood Forever? Is that what it's called?
No, that's another one. This one was called Forest Lawn, and we went to Cubby's grave, Cubby's grave, and Princess Leia, and
Telly Savalas was up there, and
Telly Savalas and Phil Paxton. Bunch of people are all buried right there together.
Yeah.
But Matt's got the touch.
We salute you, Matt. Much appreciated. And so JBR family, give your thank you vibes to Matt over there in LA.
And lastly, I got to say something. I got him in.
You did. I'm very proud of you, man. I'm very proud of you. It's Michael Caine. There he was. He showed up in the middle.
I got him in there.
You're a bit like, I tell you what it's a bit like. It reminds me of Sheila James, God bless her, when no matter what the subject is, she will work Lazenby in there somehow. And
she does.
And Michael is like your George for Sheila. Yeah, so you're doing well, mate.
That sounds weird, but yes, absolutely.
You know what I'm saying.
Yep.
All right, man. Good stuff. Well, I better let you get to bed, hadn't I?
That would be nice.
Yeah.
All right, dude. Hopefully. Thank you. Man. See you guys.
Cool.
All right.
Take it easy. We'll see you next time. James Bond Radio will return. Bye. I've been Tom Sears. Who have you been?
JW.
Bye.
Hope you enjoyed the show. Good night.